Welcome back. Abortion rights, a woman's right to choose. It's hard to come up with another issue as contentious, which is why it's rather incredible that Barbara Javecki is so respected by activists on both sides of the issue. For over 24 years, she has led and overseen the expansion of the local Planned Parenthood affiliate to 22 Florida counties, serving 45,000 patients from Sarasota to Orlando. Planned Parenthood offers abortion services and women's health care to those who otherwise can't afford it. But now, as Congress continues to work on a health care bill that would largely defund Planned Parenthood, Javecki is retiring, leaving an organization at a time when its funding and its future are in jeopardy. And joining us now is Barbara Javecki, the CEO of Planned Parenthood of Central and Southwest Florida. Barbara, welcome. It's an obvious question. Does one thing have to do with another? Does your retirement now have anything to do with the fact that we are at a time where I don't know if there's ever been more jeopardy of federal funding being cut off to Planned Parenthood?
Well, Alan, you know, after 24 years at the helm and seeing an awful lot of opposition to Planned Parenthood over the years that we've been able to overcome, I believe that for me personally, this is the right time because I'm, you know, ready to move on and with my life. Has nothing to do with the fights in Congress or with the new president. But I do still want to take this opportunity to point out to people that Planned Parenthood has celebrated our 100th year of service this year. And we've been embattled since Margaret Sanger opened up her clinic in Brooklyn, New York. We continue to represent healthcare access for millions of women around the country, women who are poor, women that don't have access to care in other places. And Planned Parenthood has been that vehicle to provide them with cancer screenings and breast exams and to keep them from getting pregnant whenever they don't want to through birth control.
So is this simply just where you are at in your own life and your own career, or has the fight, you know, just kind of beaten you or down, or is it a slog? Or?
I don't think I look beaten down at all, as a matter of fact, and I'm going to go out fighting and use this program tonight to talk about what people can do in order to protect health care for women. It is my passion. It has been my passion for 24 years. I will always stand with Planned Parenthood. But, you know, after 24 years of working at anything, you know, people want to move on. I turned 65 this year, and
I didn't think you were going to say that.
Well, I am proud of it because I think that dedicating a life of service is what most Americans could be doing in order to improve their communities, and I'm very proud of the work of my board and my team to get where we have been.
A woman's right to choose, abortion is a contentious issue, and we're going to talk about funding for it in a moment, but this is a unique area. Although, you know, on any given day, you could drive past Planned Parenthood and there may be protesters out there. You have, this is not simply a partisan issue. At least in Sarasota, you have many people from both sides of the aisle who serve on your board. Do you think that people don't realize that all the time?
Well, I think that it is can be a partisan issue, but there are many, many people from the Republican Party who support Planned Parenthood. We have lots of donors, we have board members, and certainly patients who come to us. You know, women's health shouldn't be a political issue, and it has been politicized over the years. And what I would say is that it's most important for people to understand that thinking people who understand that a woman's road out of poverty, a woman's ability to complete her education, to make the best decisions for herself and her family and her future, have to do with choice. And if you care about the future of the community and you care about the future of children being born, you want them to have the best circumstances, and you want women to have the chance to create those circumstances for themselves. And Planned Parenthood has been doing that for 100 years. No group in the country right now has the 80% approval rating that Planned Parenthood has right now. That comes from us being embattled. 1 in 5 women in this country have used Planned Parenthood at some point in their lives. That's an astounding number of patients that we reach, and every person that you know has a Planned Parenthood story, and they are predominantly wonderful stories. I get touched when I'm in the grocery store. People come up to me quietly and say, Thank you for what you're doing.
But
It is a universal appreciation fact that the majority of Americans believe that Planned Parenthood should be funded.
But let's talk about that for a second, because the argument on the other side is that, especially if you do not believe in abortion rights, is should I, as a taxpayer, pay for something that I believe is
So
wrong?
let me tell you that there is no taxpayer money that pays for abortion services. We do not get a check from the federal government. Planned Parenthood in the state of Florida, we receive Medicaid reimbursement for care that is provided, not for abortion services, for care that is provided,
Right.
for preventative care, for birth control, for sexually transmitted disease diagnosis and treatment, for cancer screening. We get, this is the biggest fallacy that people keep using. My tax dollars shouldn't pay for this. They don't. It is Medicaid fees that are reimbursed to us, just like any other doctor that you go
So
to with
the-
an insurance card.
So the money that does go for providing abortions, where does that come from?
It comes from patients who pay for it. Patients pay cash, or their insurance pays for it.
Okay. So how would you describe what is going on in Washington in terms of, look, they've been talking for years now about repealing and replacing Obamacare. We are right up against another possible
We
vote.
certainly are again.
And
what a waste of time.
well, I mean, that's the healthcare debate is, on one hand, it's another issue. On the other hand, it directly impacts the federal funding you do get from
The Medicaid reimbursement.
Exactly. So obviously, this is something that even that part of the funding is crucial to Planned Parenthood.
But more importantly, the health care is crucial to the women in America, because Trump Care is going to provide less care for people. It's going to cost them more, and women are going to suffer because it's going to take away one of the most crucial Medicaid providers in the country. You could talk to doctors in this area and find out how many accept Medicaid. They don't, because it doesn't even pay for the basic services that we provide.
All right. So often you hear the argument, well, why can't we fund other organizations and nonprofits that provide, women's care and not have to have it associated with Planned Parenthood? Respond to that.
Well, if 1 in 5 women choose to come to Planned Parenthood at some point in their lives, we're doing something right, because we provide confidential care and respectful care in a manner with a specialty that nobody else in the country does, like Planned Parenthood does. And we are located in places where other organizations don't work. We have most of our clinics located in rural areas or underserved areas, and we have, I think, the capacity, both with the diversity of our staff, to offer really amazing services, wonderful services that are not duplicated other places. And when the state gives out lists of where people can go, if you looked at those lists that were put out last year, they were podiatrist offices, school offices. There is a lot of propaganda that comes out that simply is not based in truth.
Let's get to two other issues quickly. You have become the face and the name that has raised a lot of money for Planned Parenthood in Central and Southwest Florida. That's not easy to replace. And so are you concerned that, and I know there's a search underway for your replacement right now, but anybody who comes in is not going to have the ability to do what you've been doing?
Well, I certainly hope to hand over the reins to a very well-organized organization that is at the top of its game. The leadership team that I have is amazing. I have a great, creative, and dedicated board of directors who have been the partners throughout this. This is not one person's accomplishments. This is a whole team that has worked together with a community that is passionate. And I have no doubt that the community will continue to be supportive.
We have less than a minute left, but one last question. It's not just the funding part, which is really an issue for Planned Parenthood right now. You have a new president who is appointing justices to the Supreme Court who oppose abortion. There are people who are concerned or pleased that Roe versus Wade is now a law that is in jeopardy.
That's very true, and we all share that very deep concern that Donald Trump has the ability to appoint justices that way. I think that one of the things we all have to pay attention to is what the Constitutional Revision Committee does this year in the state of Florida, because Florida has a stronger right to privacy than the U.S. Constitution for women and for men, and that gives us an advantage.
We'll have to leave it there. Barbara, good luck to you.
Thank you so much, Alan.
Right. We are just getting warmed up. We'll have much more on Planned Parenthood right after we check First Alert Weather. Stay with us. Welcome back. We just heard from the departing leader of Planned Parenthood of Southwest and Central Florida. Now time to debate the legacy of Barbara Javecki and the future of Planned Parenthood with Susan Nylon of the Nylon Report and Rod Thompson of the Sarasota Republican Club. And Rod, I want to give you an opportunity because we are at a point right now in terms of our national debate whether or not the federal government will cut off funding for Planned Parenthood. Barbara Javecki points out that the funding that the organization gets from the federal government is for other things, other healthcare services. You have a smile on your face. Your chance to respond.
Yeah, right. Well, sure it is, because if you don't have to spend money on those things, you can put it into other things. This is not a hard shell game to figure out. Technically, the money doesn't go for abortions. The money goes to the largest abortion provider by far in the country. And I think that's the problem with it. That's the problem that every American such as myself has with funding Planned Parenthood in any way, is that their largest revenue, single revenue thing is from abortions. They're the largest abortion provider in the country. The reason for the existence of Planned Parenthood really is the abortions, because there are plenty of other organizations that can provide all the other benefits. And when you look at even just the general women's health thing, they provide like 1% of the pap smears and 2% of the breast exams. Mostly they're a referral service to other places, and they give out information. The one thing they do a lot of is abortion. So when you have somebody like me that's pro-life using our tax dollars to be able to fund Planned Parenthood is problematic, to say the least, and very divisive.
Susan, I see you chomping at the bit to...
Yeah, of course, because the most obvious difference is Rod has never stepped foot in Planned Parenthood, and I, on the other hand, use them for their services. So I would have to completely disagree with Rod's interpretation of what they offer. And they offer an incredible amount of stuff. Yes, they do referrals out for things that are beyond their capacity, but the health care that they provide women are far beyond the option of abortion. And again, it is an option of abortion. Planned Parenthood also has birthing centers. In fact, the one that I was a part of for a long time would announce the birth of every child that was born there. They have decreased the amount of abortions consistently throughout the year, and their goal is to educate people and to teach them how not to put themselves in the position. They just want the understanding that if a woman feels they have no choice, there is a safe place for that option.
Right. They have increased the number of abortions, while the total number of abortions nationwide have been declining. Planned Parenthood has been increasing the number of abortions year over year over year for decades here, and so that they have a much larger percentage. That is in their own. That is in their own number. That's their revenue. You're talking, or I mean, that's what you're talking about as far as what they do.
Yeah, but 3%.
3%. That's because
how
they
is that
count
the major moneymaker that you said it was?
Because it's more like 38% of their revenues, and the reason why it's 3% of services is because they count every pamphlet they hand out as a service, every counsel they do as a service, and each abortion is a service. Well, those are totally not equivalents, but that's how they cook the books to come up with 3%.
I don't know where you're getting your facts, but
Planned Parenthood.
No, it's not true.
Absolutely.
If Planned Parenthood was not here today, what other organizations around here are ready and able to provide the same level of women's health care?
Right. So there would have to be a transition, because like you have crisis pregnancy centers, you have a lot of different organizations that do it. You have a lot of women's centers, women's resource centers, types of things.
Wait, none of them provide medical services.
But they could.
But they don't.
If Planned Parenthood wasn't absorbing hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money. And what I'm saying is, because of the existence of Planned Parenthood, because they're sort of this black hole sucking in so much federal tax money,
gosh, Rod, that is so not true.
For others.
All those organizations, not a single one of them was equipped to handle the medical needs of a woman. Even if you go to the county, not prepared to handle it. You can't just all of a sudden say the Women's Resource Center now has to provide pap smears.
That's why I said there would have to be a transition.
A transition like decades, and
oh, no, not at all.
You'd have to change their entire model.
Well,
that's insane.
Let's just take a quick break, and we'll come back for final thoughts when we return.
Oh.
Welcome back. Our guest joining us right now for final thoughts. The debate has raged on in the commercial break. But you both are so good, we're actually going to do away with Bob's third weather just to provide you more time. Brian, I was interested when I was watching your taped interview in Jacqueline's package that we know where you stand on the issue of abortion, but you have, it seems, a lot of respect for Barbara Trevecki and the job that she's been able to do.
I think she's been very effective as leader of Planned Parenthood of Southwest Florida. She's a great fundraiser. She's a good face for the organization. She handles crises quite well. She's very professional, very good at it. I wish she'd applied all those talents to a different organization than Planned Parenthood.
Like what, the Republican Party?
If she were a real Republican, sure.
Wait, you guys, that's right, you guys have a litmus test,
That was
I forgot.
actually my next question, because Planned Parenthood points out that here in Sarasota, the board of directors, you have a number of Republicans who are on the board.
A lot.
We mostly think in this day and age of the issue of abortion as a partisan issue, but it's not always.
Well, almost no issue is totally partisan. So yeah, you're going to have exceptions to it. But I think a couple things could explain that board. Number one, we're a heavily Republican county. So if you want influence people on the board, some of them are probably going to have to be Republicans. Number two, not all Republicans are pro-life. So there are going to be Republicans and what are called conservatarians sometimes, you know, Republicans that have real libertarian leanings on certain issues that are all right with it too, and they would be on the board, or those that are just flat out libertarians, but there's no point in being part of the Libertarian Party, so they're registered Republicans. So they don't have so much a problem because they don't think that the government should be involved with any sorts of laws like that. But that's not an actual conservative Republican position, and that's where the partisan breakdown is conservative Republicans. You also have some conservative Democrats that are pro-life too, and they have a hard time fitting into their party really at times. And so yeah, it doesn't break down specifically or totally partisan, but generally it does break down partisan.
Susan, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Barbara when she was here. How concerned are you about where things are right now in Washington? You have Congress once again getting prepared to vote on repealing and replacing Obamacare, which include defunding Planned Parenthood, and you have a Supreme Court which is almost evenly split on the issue of abortion right now. If there is another justice that is picked by this president, Roe versus Wade may be something of history.
Yes and no. First of all, we've always had this issue with the Supreme Court. You know, right now, as it stands, they're pretty much the same as they've always been as far as the split with one person, Kennedy, in the middle, who's the swing vote. So that doesn't change. And yes, there's always that fear, at least for people on my side, that, you know, one of them will step down or vacate the seat and President Trump will appoint someone. So there's always that issue. And again, Planned Parenthood and abortion and Roe versus Wade, they're always going to be a hot topic. It's sad because instead of us, and the last time Rod and I were on and talked about this, we talked about all the benefits that it could actually occur working together, educating people, you know, better health care, better economic care, and so forth and so on. That's really what we should be doing, because I don't know anyone who technically supports abortion. What they do is they believe that it's an individual's choice and right. So we're always going to be having these conversations.
Right. We are going to take another short break, and then we'll be back with final thoughts in a moment. And our guest joining us right now for final thoughts. So, Rod, from your perspective, Barbara Trevecki, longtime CEO of Planned Parenthood, retiring, where we are in terms of the national debate, what is your hopes, both locally and across the country, in terms of where this debate on abortion stands?
Well, I would like to see clarity in what abortion is. I think we often actually don't talk about what abortion is. We talk about abortion, pro-choice, pro-life. We use all these terms. There's a reason why people don't want to get into the details of what an abortion is too much, because it really is sort of gruesome and hard and heartbreaking. But there's also a lot of stories about young women who are in terrible circumstances, and I wish that what we could do is, I wish that abortion wasn't legal, but I wish that what we could do is proactively upfront educate and help and guide and tutor and mentor a lot of these young women so that they didn't feel like that was their only choice.
Susan?
Yeah, I would like the actual conversation to talk about the reality of it too, and know that 75% or greater, or let's just say the majority of quote-unquote abortions aren't what Rod's explaining. They're the morning after pill that is taken within 24 hours. It's not this horrible, gruesome thing that goes on. The issues that women have to face day after day to put them in that situation where they have to make those decisions, those hard decisions, are more important to talk about than whether or not you're going to feel comfortable about the topic of abortion. So I want to say, I just want to pay tribute to Barbara. I don't know who is going to replace her. I don't think they're ever going to live up to her history, and I want to say I appreciate everything.
Right, we'll have to leave it there. But before we go, we want to share with you some thoughts about last night's show on labor on the Suncoast. There are job opportunities out there. Companies are hiring, but are the salaries enough to live on? The market has been on a tear as corporate earning reports have sent stocks soaring. That hasn't necessarily translated to our paychecks. Christine says, I made more money 23 years ago than I do now. Managed to find companies that get bought out and close, so I have to keep starting over from the bottom. So much for having a college education. Patrick says there are lots of good jobs out there. You just need the skills required to do them and the motivation. Rosemarie says, I've never lived beyond my means, and I still tell you that I make more in the 1980s and 90s than I do now. It was a lot cheaper to live too. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation on tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions. They're on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. Barbara Dravecki, the CEO of Planned Parenthood of Southwest and Central Florida, Susan Nylon of the Nylon Report, and Rod Thompson of the Sarasota Republican Club.